At least 5,000 of the peasants were slaughtered in that day. Philip's army lost maybe a dozen. It was a horrendous defeat for the peasants' revolt. Munzer himself was found hiding in a cellar in the town of Frankenhausen, and eventually was caught, forced to confess his sins, and was beheaded by the princes. Despite this horrible defeat that they faced, Munzer's legacy is not one that disappears so easily. Later generations, particularly in Germany, would look at him as a hero, as a proletarian rebel. Marxism would come along later and think of him as a saint, as a martyr to the cause.
This East German monument remains testimony to the enduring legacy of Thomas Munzer. "300 years later, Karl Marx would transform the apocalyptic ideas of Munzer into a secular ideology.
The godless communism of Karl Marx has a number of apocalyptic overtones. It relies on interpretations and language from the book of Revelation in order to understand what's happening in human history.
It envisions history in terms of a series of great stages which will culminate in a moment of crisis, leading essentially to a kind of millennium. The era of communism, when class differences and exploitation and suffering will end.
We have the words of the Internationale, the communist anthem. This is our last and final struggle. And after then, there would be no more struggles. All would be peace.
Only a century after Munzer, a new apocalyptic vision of transforming society arose. Religious and secular ideas were woven together into a bold social experiment called the New World. It began with a handful of dissident Christians fleeing the oppression of the Protestant Church of England.
The Puritans see now the possibility of literally creating, in what they saw as a new and empty world, the millennial kingdom, the vision of a truly righteous nation.
In 1630, the new governor of Massachusetts, John Winthrop, exhorted his fellow colonists to build the equivalent of Jerusalem in their new land.
"We shall find that the God of Israel is among us, when he shall make us a praise and glory, that men shall say of succeeding plantations, the Lord make it like that of New England. For we must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us."
When the Puritans talked about founding the New Jerusalem in the American colony, they're really harking to the language of the book of Revelation. Revelation 21:10 talks about Jerusalem descending from the heavens at the end of times. They see themselves really as bringing the last days, the end of time, into reality by founding this new religious experiment.
Lo, what a glorious sight appears to our believing eyes. The earth and seas are passed away.
The exuberance of that early experiment is recalled in psalms and hymns like New Jerusalem. Cotton Mather, the most legendary in a family of preachers, helped inaugurate an era of urgent anticipation.
There are many arguments to persuade us that our glorious Lord will have an holy city in America, a city the streets whereof will be pure gold.
Cotton Mather was probably one of God's most strenuous creations. He was an energetic minister, a man who sensed that the world was constantly on the edge of some great climax. There was a sense that in a matter of months, Christ might come to earth. There might be a conflagration that burns the entire world to purify it. Cotton Mather constantly warned his parishioners about this, spoke energetically about it, had prayer meetings, would get down before dinner every night on his knees and pray for the coming kingdom.
How long, dear Savior, oh, how long shall this pride our delay?
Mather and the colonists believed that Christ would return once they had built a truly righteous kingdom. It was this sort of apocalyptic rhetoric that a generation later fueled the passions of the War of Independence from England.
This was not just a simple political dispute. This was the history of redemption in the balance. That King George was not just some sort of well-intentioned but obtuse king. King George could be seen as the Antichrist.
Paul Revere depicted events as no less than a fight against the beast of the apocalypse.
It was clear to the partisans in the Revolutionary War that events in their own day were really signaling that this was a part of prophetic plan of God, especially when they looked at something like the Stamp Act.
The Stamp Act sets duties on a whole range of legal transactions. If you're going to buy a house, if you're going to sell a house, if you're going to go to court, you need stamped paper to file documents. If you're going to play cards even, you need stamped paper for those cards. There's this sense in the Revelation of the beast having a mark that it places upon all its people. So that the Stamp Act, for those who are looking at it from a millennial point of view, see this stamp as a kind of mark of the beast.
The old Puritan rhetoric of the New Jerusalem, the Promised Land, gels in the period around the Revolutionary War in a kind of secularization of those ideas. America is the New Jerusalem. They're the ones who are going to create the perfect state. This is the time that God has set in motion. This is a destiny that they are going to achieve. And it's going to lead from there into the building of a national ideology.
America, more than anywhere else, has fostered apocalyptic thinking. One stream led to the 19th century ideals of social reform. But for many in the early 1800s, a bleaker view took hold. Joseph Smith led the Mormons west in search of the New Jerusalem. And in upstate New York, there is a chapel in memory of a man whose apocalyptic message was so powerful, it endures today in the Seventh-day Adventist Church.